Hi everyone, welcome to week 9 of English 102. So this week we're working on revising your ethnography drafts, which were due last week, and I am going to have those commented on and returned to you before you watch this video, knock on wood, and we'll go ahead and get started. So when you're looking at your ethnography draft, a few things to keep in mind. It needs to be 6 to 8 pages. It should have 6 sources total, including your primary research as a source. And then if you have any questions or concerns so far, be sure to shoot me an email and I'll get back to you. But I'm hoping that the peer review and the rest of this video might explain some of the questions that you have. So I want to remind you all that the purpose of our ethnography is to really understand the local culture that you've chosen. So why you're involved in this culture and how it's related to that culture's values. So your goal is to understand this culture by letting its members speak for itself, including you. So your personal experience is relevant, and if you want to include some experience that you've had, that's totally fine, as long as it's balanced with the other sources that you found and that you're kind of encouraging discussion between all of your sources. So like I've said before, I want you to think about this essay as a conversation. Imagine each of the authors of your sources are sitting around a table and you're all chatting about this topic. You don't want to be speaking too much, but you also don't want to let them dominate the conversation either. So it's really kind of creating this balance between the two. All right, so there is a short reading this week under your week 9 readings folder. One section talks about synthesis and the other talks about revising. So I do really recommend that you read these over before starting to revise your drafts, just to kind of get a minute away from them. And the first thing I'd like you all to do is to focus on your findings section. So imagine your findings are essentially like a mini essay within the rest of your paper. Because APA format sort of encourages you to separate that background, the methodology, the research questions, and then give your findings section is going to be a little essay in itself. So in that introductory section, do you have some sort of hook? Do you give context for your topic? Do you have your working thesis at the end of that introduction in your findings? Then the body sections are your paragraphs separated from one another with indented lines. Can you identify a single key topic in each paragraph? And then are you paraphrasing and quoting from each of the sources in your body of the findings? And then finally, the conclusion. This is for my in-person class, sorry. If you don't have one yet, don't worry, but we will visit these later in this PowerPoint. The conclusion is essentially, now that you've done this research, is there anything still left to know? What could some further research look at, or what overall have you discovered about this culture, or would you like to continue discovering? So when you work on revising your findings section, this is just some sort of advice in general on revising, looking at your introduction, your thesis, your focus. How do your sentences flow together? Do you have topic sentences? Do you have transitions? Have you cited your sources? And then finally, are you explaining the significance of quotes, paraphrases, and summaries that you include? I would, if I could star one of these, I would star, circle, put a big wheel right here. Source integration is really what I'm looking for in this essay. All right, like I said, that conversation. Are you explaining why each of these sources are important, and are you incorporating those effectively? So these are general tips for revising any kind of research writing, and they apply absolutely to the findings section of our essay. So with my feedback and with these tips, you also want to look at your conclusion. So a conclusion should really do more than just summarize. I know that sometimes we're taught that a conclusion should just restate what we've talked about and then end. And really, you don't want to just walk away without discussing the significance of the research that you've done. What should your reader remember? Is there an opportunity for further research? Why was this important? I mean, you've just spent 9 weeks working on a project. Obviously, there's a purpose to it. There's a point. There's something that you want your reader to understand. And that needs to be clear in your conclusion. All right, so one thing we're going to do this week is the discussion board for week 9 is going to be a peer review. So I want you to remember that peer review really offers perspectives, not directives, meaning you're going to give just your ideas about someone else's writing, but I don't want you to consider yourself the sage on the stage, kind of telling them what to do. There are some helpful phrases here, like in your first paragraph, I see this, but I don't see this. Like in your first paragraph, I see a good hook, but I don't see your working pieces. Maybe I was confused by paragraph number 3. Or I like the way that you incorporated your source about 9/11. I can't tell if your in-text citations are right. These are really helpful because they are offering advice and not saying your in-text citations are wrong or I'm confused and I don't know what to go from here. So peer review is really just a chance for you to give some effective advice type feedback. So our discussion board will ask you to upload a copy of your ethnography, and then once everyone's uploaded theirs, we're going to workshop these in our discussion board. So there are directions on how to respond to each draft, and then you'll just need to respond to 2 people by the end of the week. All right, so while you're doing that peer review, a couple things to keep in mind. I've talked about the findings section already, but before your findings, you do want to have a background, research questions, and methodology. So does that background give a good context to their overall project? Are their research questions clear? And then does their methodology explain how they collected information, from where, and why? Remember that your methodology should talk about not just your secondary sources, but also your primary. How did you do your interview or your survey? And then the results of those should be in the findings. And then you can revisit these tips for the findings section. This is a screenshot from our readings this week, so you do have access to that. All right. Once you've gotten feedback from me and your classmates, then starts the, I'm not going to say the hard part, but then starts the individual part of revising. So here are some tips that I found to be really helpful, especially when I'm revising a bigger project. Read your paper out loud. Literally, sentence by sentence, read it out loud so you can hear how it sounds. Or alternately, print a copy and write all over it. Sometimes when we're looking at a computer screen all the time, we don't really have a good understanding of what we're looking at. Start with one section, take a break, walk away, come back and look at a different section. That way you're not trying to tackle the whole thing all at once. Another good tip is to pretend you're the reader, not the writer. All right, so put yourself in the shoes of someone interested in your research. How can you explain what you've done in this whole project clearly, concisely, and by integrating those sources? And then have the Success Center help you. There is a link on our Blackboard page to the Success Center Online Writing Lab. Let me actually pull that up. All right, so when you go into our Blackboard course, you will see there is a Success Center Tutoring and the Online Writing Lab link here. So the Online Writing Lab, the link to it is here, but you can also access it on eStorm. If you've never used it before, here's a video on how to submit an online writing assignment. But essentially, it's an opportunity for a tutor to give you feedback about your writing. So if you after getting all of this other feedback, want someone else just to look over it for editing, just be like, hey, do my sentences look right? Then you can submit it to the OWL and they'll get it back to you in a day or 2. And finally, my biggest piece of advice, don't wait until the last minute, please. Don't wait until Sunday at 11:30 to start revising because it won't go well and you'll really hate it. And then we'll all be sad. But just please don't. All right. Final drafts are due Sunday. And then we're done, guys. We are done with your first writing project. So exciting. Congratulations for making it this far. And I'm so excited to see how you guys do.